Hey everyone, welcome back to the Projector Stories podcast. I am Sarah, a 1-3 emotional projector.
Hi, I'm Laura. I'm a 5-1 splenic projector, and we have a name, which is exciting.
We have a name, which is the most I feel open G name that you could possibly get while still being somewhat organized. Yeah, we are just going to basically share our stories from our 1156 channels. I mean, they're going to come from everywhere, but we both have that channel. And so we're going to share things about our lives as they pertain to our insights that we gather around human design and deconditioning and questions we have and things of that nature. So, welcome.
Thanks
Both
for tuning in. To start us off, Sarah, I was recently invited to something. Would you like to hear about it?
Yeah.
So it's not so much an invitation, more of a summons, lovingly known as jury duty, which I think brings up a big topic of conversation around like tribal loyalty, collective loyalty in terms of human design in like 2027 and the future of what may or may not happen with institutions crumbling. So yeah, I got invited to jury duty, which, it's just an interesting concept to think about from the human design perspective because we don't get the opportunity as individuals to respond and say, yes, like I have a sacral energy to do this, or yes, I'm going to improve myself by doing this. Like we're just forced to do it because that's what institutions dictate. So, what are your thoughts or opinions, or if you have any?
Dude, it's so hard listening to Raw for so long because, like, what ends up happening, and I think you can attest to this too, is like eventually you just don't care about anything.
Yeah, well, okay. Yes. Because Raw would always say that he's not a moralist. And
Right.
jury duty is something that, is rooted in morality of like you either did a crime or not. And based on the law, we're going to deem this crime moral or immoral. And based on that, you're going to go to jail or not, or pay the due or whatever it is. And so listening to so much Raw, like I've put it in my head that like I'm also not moral. I also am pro immorality. But then in actuality, I don't think that's true. Like that's the story that my mind tells itself. But in actuality, I think I am pretty darn moral. And so my mind has been coming up with like things to say. Well, when I get to jury duty, first off, it's in Compton. I don't want to go to Compton. So I'm going to try, which, okay, part of that is with it being in Compton, it's like left world stuff. It's being strategic, muggle things. Like I have abandoned being a muggle since I've started deconditioning, and I'm not used to doing the muggle things anymore. So that means I have to like figure out how to go through the system and be a left strategic muggle and hopefully change the courthouse that I'm supposed to go to because again, I don't drive. Like that means I have to hitch a ride to Compton, which is not necessarily the safest thing. But also, I've been telling myself, like, what can I tell the judge? Can I tell the judge I don't believe in morality? Can I tell the judge, like, I don't think there's a choice and it's all predetermined? Can I tell, like, what can I do to figure out how to not have to be on the board? Can I tell the judge that I'm going to say that they're innocent no matter what? Because even if they committed a crime, like, I don't necessarily agree that going to jail is a punishment that's correct for committing a crime that they had no choice to commit or not. So the mind does funny things when presented with the opportunity to do so.
Well, and this is just such a freaking good example of how like nuanced the human design experimenting is compared to the very seemingly straightforward advice and information that was given, to Rob by the voice. There's so much layered nuance that comes up in like the deconditioning of, like you're saying, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to go into a strategic world. Like, I'm not really following my strategy and authority here because, I think your spleen is probably like, no, I don't want to do that. And if you were to be doing it like to a extreme extent, or if you were radically following it, you might even go as far as just skipping out on jury duty. But then that puts you in trouble with the law. And it's like, do you want to deal with the consequences of that?
Yeah. I don't
So
know. What is
Yeah.
correct? Because it's
It's like,
not an
how
actual.
radical are you, Laura?
Well, I guess like the body does what the body does. Hopefully, the mind doesn't dictate it, and we see like that's why they think like I'm more moral than I would have thought my mind is, because the quote unquote moral thing to do is to go and not be radical and to show up to jury duty anyways. The amoral thing is to give him the middle finger and not show up and potentially get fined with like my zero money, because again, left world muggle stuff, like my finances are in disarray because they don't have the energy to figure them out, and that's part of the woes of being a motorless projector and like in with the right mind and a right brain in the left world. And so, yeah.
Deconditioning, mind you, deconditioning from all of that, right? So it's not just like it's not just like you're still like melting off all of the stuff from yourself. And so you're not really fully yourself yet to be able to like work in the world, quote unquote, not work, but guide in the world in the way that you're supposed to. So it is very one foot in, one foot out, no source of income, which is a very real, like as far as projectors are concerned,
Projector dilemma, yeah.
it's a projector dilemma if you're really being radical. Like how radical? I think about this all the time with the people in the Facebook groups because I'm like, how many of these people like don't work like 9 to 5 generator jobs? You know, how many of them really are doing that? I'm curious.
Some of
Not
them
to like,
find ways to earn money passively, though.
yeah, well, no, and I
Whether
know,
it's affiliate marketing or other things or things online, like they find ways, but they still have to put in energy to do that. So it's like quote unquote passive income, but the body still has to make that happen. So
yeah. Well, no, and I think there's plenty of instances of people that are in, what is seems to be now like at least 15,000 projectors that have been amalgamated in one area on Facebook,
yeah, if you haven't checked it out, maybe you should. There's lots of people there.
there's lots of projectors. So I'm like, I wonder what percentage of these have gotten really, really real about it because I don't know that I had a choice. It was interesting because I was looking at my design progressed, my design progressed astrology chart, which is like not something that I'm going to go into here because
Raw is rolling over in his grave.
I know. He's like, what? What did you just say? He's like, you're fired from being a projector. You're fired from human design. Go back home. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was like looking at that and I was realizing that with the past 2 years, which have been like the most eye-opening, conscious raising years of my entire existence, that it's just been like, just like thing after countless thing I have had to let go of from the AKA quote unquote, I guess not AKA, just quote unquote from the muggle world that I just let go of. But then it's like all of the conditioning that I have as far as just still within my body and my cells that I can't just cut away like I can a job or I can a relationship that's not right or a boss that isn't right or a place or apartment that isn't right. Like you can't get rid of yourself. That's why they say wherever you go, there you are. So it's like it's just a very difficult thing to be able to live radically in this world, even if you're doing all of the things by the book, like kind of Lora is. I mean, as far as being a
Well,
protector goes.
I try. No, my not self is like constantly running this show.
I
I the mind. See, the thing is, like there is another thing. I think did I talk about it last time, the massage therapy thing?
No, I don't think so. No. Either way, just
Well, Sarah knows. I was invited to I think I mentioned I was invited to massage therapy school, but like the whole it coming to something didn't work out. And sorry to interrupt you. Sorry. Did you want to finish your thought?
I don't know what I was gonna say.
Okay. uh, the COVID happened. Then classes were postponed because you can't massage people virtually. It's kind of like a hands-on experience. Um, And so the whole process of completing our classes in hours, I was invited by my friend, my generator friend, and so she did it with me. But the process of completing our hours was delayed. And eventually, like, I ran out of fuel. Like, I was writing her sacral energy in class, and I was writing the environment during that time, and like switching it to being online, like there is no energy to do it anymore. So after we actually finished our classes, the process of me actually doing the like application through the state board took a while because hello, motorless projector without the ability to focus, even though my son is in the gate of focus, like it took a while. My generator friend was able to do it much faster than me and much more efficiently. And so we did it. And then we found out that our school was losing its credibility because it was a little etch a sketch. And so we had to prove our education to the state board by submitting all of our documents, all of our notes, videos of us in class, like whatever we had to prove ourselves, we had to do it. So it's like, here, we're inviting you to prove yourself. And so I did. And it took them a year to get back to me. And they came back saying, sorry, you don't get your certification approved because you didn't submit anything. And I tried poking them and be like, I actually did. Like, I told Sarah the day this happened, I was furious. I don't get ruffled easily emotionally from like my own things. Like, other people's emotions ruffling me is a whole other thing, but like my own emotions being ruffled happens quite rarely in my own experience, unless like something big happens. Anyways, my feathers were ruffled. I was upset. And the mind comes up with all these stories of like, well, you don't want to do that anymore. You don't have to prove yourself. Like, completing the thing and trying to make it happen is you proving yourself, and you don't have to prove yourself. But I think that is the mind trying to prove that it doesn't have to prove itself. So do like the energy to actually prove itself is not a mental thing. And like this is kind of relevant because we're coming into 2024,
Yeah.
and January is the month of people setting resolutions and then failing at them because we all have undefined egos and we're not here to prove anything to anyone or ourselves. And we don't have the, well, we don't like 64% of the population doesn't have the energetic capacity to like maintain resolutions and uphold them. And that energy is in the body. It's not in the mind deciding that it's going to do something or not. The mind has no say when it comes to willpower. It's not mind over matter. It's mind over mind over mind over mind thinking about itself.
Unless,
So,
well, just to say, unless you have a
yeah,
defined ego, in which case sometimes it is mind over matter.
but it's body over matter. It's
Well, yeah, it's still the body, but it's like you can like decide, okay, I'm gonna do this
but
in
it's
your mind.
authority that decides. It's
Right.
the person's own inner authority.
It is their inner authority, but they're actually able to say, I'm gonna do this and follow through with doing this. So it's like for some people, which is probably why people said mind over matter, they were defined egos. They were
They
defined.
could do it. They're like, we can do it. You can too.
Yeah, and we were like, seriously? Like, no. Like I can't tell you, and it's so true to be like an undefined ego and see this happening. I was just saying to Laura, quitting smoking was it was such a process because my mind is I quit, started, quit, started, quit, started, quit, started, quit, started. I can't tell you how many times. And basically what eventually happened, and this is I think the only trick to really quitting anything as an undefined ego is you never really quit it because like you may smoke you may do the thing once or twice here or there, so like saying something like you're going to never do something fast and hard, but like the way that I used to smoke, which was almost in like a suicidal way, I was like chain smoking, like I could never do that again because I'm in my physical body and I can feel it. And I was disassociated from it before. It's like the closer you get to your body, the closer your personality, you could say consciousness gets to the design crystal. Like I think the less likely you're going to make these out of pocket decisions that are completely all mental and like are just devoid of like what's going on in your body. So it's like I have smoked cigarettes since I quote unquote quit, but I have never gone back to smoking the way that I used to. And so it's not to say that you can't, but it's an important distinction to make about how it actually happens, and that you have no choice in the matter, basically. Because I didn't feel like when I wanted to, it was never available to me. And then eventually it just was, it just was what my cells were now. It was just the new version, the 2.0 version of me. And it's funny because there's so many, just to circle back to what you were saying about the situation with having to do jury duty. It's like I just posted in the projectors group about needing to buy a car as an emotional authority person. And and also as a 1-3, because we're really into researching things. It's like the deeper I go down the rabbit hole, and part of me is just, I love, physically, my body loves being in a car and driving. It just is part of what I've realized has to do with my left bodiness and my right personalityness. But um not having it is challenging. But at the same time, I just don't have the energy or the clarity to buy a car and seeing what it's like. Like, how many emotional people have gotten forced by salesmen in the moment to buy a car because they're getting like all hyped up on the emotional high. And just like, how many times was that incorrect for them to do? And how many like people are truly that are doing their experiment, like buying cars by the strategy and authority, like deciding if they're going to go to jury duty and what they're going to do about it by their strategy and authority. Like, are they just making big life decisions by it, or are they looking at it in a more microscopic lens and making other decisions by it? And what's the right thing to do? I don't know. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
we live
I
in
mean,
a
it's an
moral.
experiment. So, like there has to be both like the control group and the trial group or whatever it's called. Like you can't make all your decisions one way. You have to mix and match your decisions to see what actually results in bitterness. But
Yeah.
face the consequences therein if you do it incorrectly, consciously, for the sake of doing it in quote unquote incorrectly. And be like, okay, I'm bitter. I knew it was coming. Like, but it sucks.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like that's also where it's like, don't get, what is it, analysis paralysis, where it's like,
Yeah.
then this is
Yeah.
a very 1-3 thing to say. So I can't speak for every line
And
that
Libra.
exists
So
out there,
Libra
this
thing to
all the
say too.
profiles, but like you don't want to get so caught up in making the right decision, especially while you're deconditioning, that you
Do
basically, what
anything.
Laura was saying is like, her mind is telling her that she doesn't need to prove herself, but like, would her body, without her mind saying that, just go along and go to jury duty and not, make a fuss about trying to follow strategy and authority? You know? Um, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm a analysis paralysis type of person, I would say, and like I just talk myself out of anything because I feel like I'm not equipped to do anything. But there are times that my body will actually do things, and I'm like, oh, look, my body's doing the thing. But the amount of things that actually get done by my body are minuscule. And so I feel like that's part of the process of realizing that life isn't supposed to be super hectic and busy, not necessarily for projectors, and because we don't necessarily have all the energy to do all the things. And the things that we are equipped to do, like, are itty bitty. They're
Yeah.
just not constant. Like every once a month, you get to do something maybe and face that as like, okay, this is sort of reality. But or is the mind gonna create more stories about it and be like, well, you could be doing this and you could be doing that, and you're just talking yourself out of it because you're trying to be a good projector, quote unquote. Like the theme of this episode is quote unquote. But you're trying to be a good projector, so you're not going to initiate, and then you talk yourself out of the body doing things that the body would otherwise be doing, I think.
Right, right. And that's where, I think I was listening to the Human Design Collective podcast with Mark Germain, and he said something along the lines of like an enlightened not self. And I'm just thinking about like how many people are thinking that they're living their lives by strategy and authority, and like it's just really they're not self, like, you know. And so
I feel like that's me. I think I am, but I'm really not.
I mean, what happened to me as a 1-3 is I have crashed an emotional split definition. I have crashed and burned so hard in making decisions for myself that there is no reason for me to be doing it anymore. Like it's just I give up. Like that's what it had to come to for me to like really like fully surrender to this, because I'm like, I'm not equipped. As Ra would say, I'm helpless and incompetent. Like I literally am not equipped to make decisions for myself. Somebody else needs to do this, please. And that's that, I kind of have come to the like end. And it's interesting because like you were saying, Laura, with the just realizing that like life is not supposed to be busy and hectic for projectors.
But
And
that's
it's
a homogenized statement. Maybe some are. There's some projectors that have 8 centers defined, like
right.
everything but the sacral center. So
Well, and there's
maybe for
some
them,
projectors that have like markets external environment. And so like just the
yeah,
external like movement and like things of that nature is correct for them. Like being around that kind of like just
activity. Yeah.
yeah, activity is correct for them. So there's nothing that you can generalize really ever, which is kind of frustrating, and like it's just not the way that life works. And you really have to get real about when you're lying to yourself about shit. And it's like your not self can be so warm and cozy, and like you're really thinking, oh, this is me, this is really me. And it's not you. Like it isn't you, it's a lie. And it's funny because like I'll give you a perfect example of how this happened. Me and Steph, my person that I work with, one of my dear friends, she started a business, Manny Jen, emotional, but we decided to onboard a new client. And like in the beginning of it, when it was all happening, I was with her and I was like, my emotional center was like beefed up. I was like, I wrote like the best email. I sold the shit out of what we were doing. And it wasn't like I was being fake. It was very much the energy was there, and I was able to like just tap into it because it was correct and use it.
And
And it
you
was,
were in person, which is huge
and we were in
because
person. We were in
you
person.
could use her sacral energy.
Yes, yes. And we were in person. And it's not to say like the following week there was still like a decent amount of energy. It's like the energy didn't just like kick off the second I left her, but it kind of did. But anyway, like it was so funny because the client decided to like move forward with our proposal, and they said yes. And I was like, before we say yes, Stephanie, like, are you sure about this? Because you didn't really sleep on it. Like you didn't really let your emotional authority sleep on it, and neither did I. And then we were both just kind of like, yeah, fuck it. We were both like excited, and we just said like, yeah, fuck it. Excuse my French. I'll have to, I don't know, sorry. But in any case, so we have the client, and then I'm realizing as things are progressing, I'm like, this client is not correct for us. It's not correct for Steffi, and it's not correct for certainly not correct for me. What I think that I'm doing here is not correct. And I had convinced myself somehow my 1-3-ness. There's so many ways that you can just kind of like, if you want to make a decision in a specific way, you can find information that will support it. Like, oh, I'm a 1-3, like I can make mistakes, and it's fine. And so instead of following my strategy and authority and just anyway, but at the end of the day, like it was just not right. And we had to kind of go our separate ways with a client. And me and Steffi talked after, and we were just like, I was like, I can't pretend to be a generator. Like, I can't do it. Like, and I realized in that moment that a lot of my energy does come like high energy. And this is what they say about emotional authority people. It's like, I can get a lot done, and then get out. Like, I can't, it's not a constant, I can do this every day, every week. And the whole time, I've been thinking in my head that I can do that. Like, I think, like, it never really occurred to me that I can't do that. that it's incorrect for me to do that. And so I had this whole freaking fantasy in my head about what it is that I'm capable of doing and what I want my life to look like based on what I think I'm capable of doing. And it just, it showed me the situation. Like, I'm a projector. I need to be able to be a projector. I need to address things as a projector. I cannot be in the weeds like a generator, and I have to stop acting like I can, And so that was luckily with my bonds made and broken thing, there is this level of like me and Steffi have to like kind of reassess what it is we're doing together all the time. And it's okay. And like if one way of doing things together is destroyed, then like something new is there because I can't really stick to things with my undefined G and my freaking just bonds my line 3. It's like I have to get out. I'm like ready to just my body's like anarchy. We're burning this thing down. Like so that was a really just moment of me being like, wow, the not self is so profound. It's so deep. It's brilliant. It's as brilliant as me. Because it's what I think I am, And
but
so
but it's just perfect because the 3 is supposed to figure out what doesn't work, and this
yeah.
whole thing was you figuring out, okay, this doesn't work. So
Is it though? Or was it me not following my strategy and authority?
or
Is it
both.
or is it both? Right? We don't, or is it that in the 7 years of deconditioning, you're figuring like I'm always gonna have to be doing this line 3 stuff. It's just part of my nature, but maybe I'll be doing it in a more correct way after I decondition, as opposed to like trying to be a generator, right? Or like, whatever. So I don't know.
It's hard. It's so easy to be a generator pretender, like especially in the aura of a generator, because you just take it on. You're like, oh wow, like look at all this energy I have. This is great. I can do so much. And it's so easy to believe that it's you when it's not. But so did you guys keep the client or did you
Well,
break
it
that?
just it kind of naturally ended with them. But it was, you know, part of it was like I thought that Steffi was really when it was going to be satisfied by doing this kind of work. And so that was like on the one hand, and like after we really got into it and realized what it was that we were doing, it was like this isn't Steffi's zone of genius or what she wants to be doing. And I don't have the capacity to be taking it all on myself. So it was just kind of it ended naturally, which was really cool to see, which is like I have a lot of deep shame over line 3 stuff about like things not working out and something just being wrong with me. And like in this moment, it was the first time that like I felt a little bit of healing happening there because I was like, this isn't my fault. Like, this isn't my fault. This is just the way that it goes. Like, and I know because it was funny on the phone with a client, or not on the phone. We were sending some kind of a video. I was like, look, this is what we think it's going to be. This is what in our best educated opinion it's going to be, but things always change based on what's going on and the energy that's happening and then speed things take. You cannot know what it's going to take in the outset, no matter how much things you've worked on prior to. So it was just like me saying that in the outset and then it happening kind of like that, and seeing like, oh, okay, this wasn't what we thought it was going to be, made me feel way better about it not being what we thought it was going to be, because I called it out. I said, I'm just going to name this like because I've been through it so many times. But
So
anyways,
I think it's fascinating. You and Steffi are both emotionally defined, so you guys can quote unquote avoid confront or not avoid, but like be confrontational and find truth. So you
yeah.
could find the truth in that situation. And I'm just imagining how it would have unfolded for undefined emo people with also an undefined ego center. Like they would be trying to prove themselves and they'd be like head in the sand, avoiding any sort of confrontation about the fact that it's wrong. And so
Yeah.
they would have kept the client on saying like, no, we can fix this. No, we can fix this. No, like, let's not admit that we made a mistake, or like that this isn't correct. Not that you made a mistake, but like that this
Yeah.
isn't correct
Yeah.
anymore. And
Yes.
so it's like kudos to your guys' auras for like having that ability to like see the truth for what it is. because we don't all have that, which has
No.
its ups and downs. There's pros and cons to every center. Also, I want to apologize to all the undefined throats out there for having roasted you last episode. Sorry, change of topic. So Sarah was telling me something that she heard about Raw. So this is like the Zen Human Design group. If you've come across them, you know. If you don't, maybe don't look into it. Maybe do, up to your discretion. But Sarah was watching a video of Zeno, who worked with Raw previously, and she was calling Raw out for not liking emotionally defined people. And she's emotionally defined, or was. She passed away, I believe. But she was hurt by the fact that Raw didn't like emotional people. But here I was, roasting undefined throats because I don't like undefined throats because they're attention whores. But it's not like they are, it's their mechanics are, their aura is. If they get hooked into a defined throat center, their body is going to use that energy and talk. Just like for us with our undefined sacrals, we're going to hook into that sacral energy and use it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure like
Our
other
not
people
self,
find,
our not self is.
well, yeah, the whiteness of us, yeah.
Yeah.
But it just naturally happens because that's how mechanics are structured. And so no offense to the undefined throats out there that I don't like you, but it's like my body gets frustrated with your not self mechanics but it's like there's nothing you can do about it unless like you're like hyper aware and you don't initiate any words out of your mouth unless you're invited to do so, or it's like correct for you to respond in that way, which is so, rare for that to happen so precisely. So, but again, like people probably get fed up with all the undefined egos trying to prove ourselves. Like we're probably super annoying to y'all. There's always like something on the other side. So it was just like funny because I did the same thing that Zeno said Raw did, which is like not like emotionally defined people, but like I get it. Y'all are a lot. And it's
Yeah.
nothing you do. It's
Yeah.
how the energy manifests in me. And I
Yeah.
don't like that feeling. And I prefer to avoid that feeling if I can, if it's an emotional low, which is something that's super important for emotional people. And Sarah can probably attest to this in relationships. It's like you have to love me at my highs and my lows. You can't just like me at my highs. You have to accept all of me. And that is why emotional people have to wait in committing in relationships, because they need their other partner to see the full scope of them. You can't just jump into a elopement right off the bat with someone because y'all are high on emotions from doing something at Vegas and like winning $500. Like, no, you have to like wait it out and see the full emotional roller coaster for what it is before you can find clarity and say, oh yeah, this is correct or incorrect for me.
Oh, and I have not waited out the whole roller coaster, and it's like it's amazing. Like I don't want. I think all emotional people can understand this or can relate to this, but it's like anybody likes you when you're high. Anybody.
Yeah, you guys are fun. You're nice.
Yeah.
Like that's a good feeling. But like emotional low people are like when you're angry, or like for generators, when it's both frustration and that emotional low, like it is heavy. And
Yeah.
then like I feel it as an empath, and me and my open emotional or undefined emotional center takes it in. And then I feel the low too, and it's amplifying it. That's the thing. It amplifies and distorts. So
Yeah.
it's not just the same amount. It's more, and it's like fuzzy and not pure. It's
Yes.
a
Yes. Yes. And I think that's a really good thing, the not pure thing, because I was listening to Alok, and like Alok is one of the few emotional people that Rod did like having around, or at least to a specific extent. Like Alok said that himself. Um and he said that with the emotion, there are very few people that you're going to have in your life, if any, that are going to be able to be a clean mirror for your emotional system, like a real pure mirror for your emotional system, instead of them taking your emotions and amplifying it and distorting it, like really being a mirror for you. And it's not to say it's anyone's fault, because there's all kinds of not self mechanics and conditioning that are at work when you get activated by a defined emotional person. But like I recognized in that moment that the distortion is so much what is painful for us emotionally defined people to deal with, because it's like we don't have anyone that can really like put a mirror to us and say why what we're feeling is either wrong or right, because usually they're just like uncomfortable by it. So it's not like they're really addressing it in like a clean way. There's something that's going on internally with them that they're biased, and like everyone's biased, but it's a really difficult thing to not have a clean mirror for your emotional system, and nobody has one. Nobody has one. I mean, maybe a few people around have one. And then you can say, well, it's not, you need a clean mirror for any system. And in a sense, yes. But in another sense, the emotional system as a projector, having a motor defined, since this is the last awareness center that is still a motor, it creates a lot of energy in your life that you really have to find a way to deal with. That non-emotional people, they don't have to deal with that kind of energy unless you're around them for a consistent amount of time. What were we talking about?
For those mirrors, I feel like someone who is open emotionally, but also has no hanging gates pointing towards the emotional center, that might be a peer mirror, because there's no way for them to have their own experience of
Okay.
emotional definition. So like, even I feel like there's, open centers, but you can still have hanging gates pointing towards those open centers.
Yeah.
So I feel like that affects the way you experience that particular center, even though you have no centers in it. Like, there's the communication that happens between those two gates within that channel, which
Yeah.
kind of colors it a certain way. But yeah, like someone with like that whole side of the chart completely white, I feel like that would be a mirror for
Well,
emotional
and I
people.
think it's also like he was an imperfect human, but like he was himself. And it's like he knew where he began and where he ended. And so he wasn't like projecting anything onto the emotional person. And so they had to be really real about, like, a lock had to be really real about what his wave was, versus like, trying to blame it on someone else or blame something on someone else, because you can do that when you're emotional. And it's crazy that you say that, because I went through charts. I collect charts of people. I've been doing it since I was like 16. And so I have so many charts, and many of the people in my life, the long-standing people in my life, totally open emotional centers, totally open. I don't know about the hanging gates towards them. That's another thing. But um, there's something to be said about that. What it is, I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
Um,
it's the opposites attract. It's the program at work.
yeah, it is. It really, really is. Because then again, then it's like I find myself with all of the defined egos and defined G centers and defined spleens, and I'm like, okay, shit. This is rough. But yeah, and like I was like, it's like you look through, and this is where your deconditioning happens here, looking through all of the relationships of the past, and you get to see where you're you know there's this duality that exists within human design, and well, within the world, within the biverse. I mean, it's within human design because that's what we're talking about it through, but it's like, it is what it is. And there's the half of you that is moving towards homogenization, that's moving towards sexual reproduction with someone that is your opposite, because that's what the program wants. And then there's the essential nature of who it is that you are, that you have to like hold on to with as tightly as you can, because everything in the external world, everything that's homogenized, is pulling you into that stream of homogenization. And so it's either a relationship is a relationship that is a homogenizing force, or it's not. And you can you can make one that is into one that's not, if there's enough awareness around it, right? So this is not me saying get rid of all of your relationships that are defining you where you're open, but it is to say that you're some things that started a long time ago with people, they have deep roots in your not self and your conditioning, and that just is what it is.
It reminds me of a Raw quote where he says, like, projectors are here to be conditioned. We're
Yeah.
here, like if you're in a incorrect relationship, you somehow break in, enter into it correctly if you're invited to do so as a projector. And then that allows the mechanics to be conditioning you correctly rather than incorrectly and perpetuating your not self. But yeah, we're here to be conditioned. We're here to fill in because we're here to know the other. Like
Yeah.
we're a type that's here to be conditioned more so than all the others. And
Yeah.
yet we have this like big harpoon of propaganda and like conditioning's bad and all these things that we say to ourselves. You can't avoid it, but it's there and it's always at play and you can hold on to your truest self. Yeah, there's so many things to say.
Well, you cannot avoid it, but you also shouldn't identify with it, right? That's when you lose
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's when the losing yourself happens. And if there's a relationship that you've been in for a very long time and you didn't, like, you don't even know where you end and where you don't, where you end and the other person begins. And that shit scares me. It really does. It really scares me as a projector, because generators have a way of being able to access the truth of themselves far more
Yeah,
easily than we do. So,
yeah,
I've said this, I don't know if I said this to Laura. I have two projector, not self projector, mind you, parents. No choice, but it's just it's really scary to me, the extent to which people can get conditioned as projectors, and like projectors can be really messed up, deeply messed up because of their homogenization and not self, more so than almost any other type that I've seen. And it's why, like, on the one hand, I love projectors, and also they scare me if
yeah.
they're in their not self. There's this double-edged sword to it, and most projectors are in their not selves.
Yeah, on when Sarah was telling that to me, it made me realize I don't know projectors. I have so few projectors in my life, like who are authority figures for me. Like my parents are generators, my aunts and uncles are generators, my grandparents, well, the one that I looked up was generator, like everyone's generator around me. And like my siblings are one's a generator, one's a reflector, but like I have no projectors. And it's so limiting for me to experience them in aura to know that scariness or know that deliciousness if they are correct. So
Yeah.
it's like it's so foreign. They're like aliens apart from myself. Like I'm an alien among non-aliens and I don't know where the other aliens are.
Well, and you're used to being like among these non-aliens, and you're just like, that's fine. And it's, for me, like, I don't know what it is about me, but I have always managed to get a lot of projectors in my life. Um, Always. And I've been around generators too, and I mean, I never felt like I fit in there either, but it was just when I started to pull myself outside of the relationships that I had formed, like some of the things that were the most harrowing for me, and like the realization of the things that pulled me the most into my not self were the projector relationships. Because generators, I mean, there's definitely generators out there that are in massive transference, you know what I mean? But they don't, they aren't as addicted to their not self and blind to it in a way. I don't know how else to describe it.
Maybe it's because like they have such moment to moment access to correctness.
Yeah.
Like because their sacral energy, it's constantly on or off or on or off. Like it's a 24/7 mechanism apart from when they're sleeping. So they have potential access to seeing correctness much more easily than projectors do because we have to wait a century to be invited to something as obscure as jury duty and be like, oh, great.
Well, and I think there's this thing that happens in transference for projectors that they like, or where I feel like generators can go like back and forth a lot quicker. So like they kind of they toe the line on either side and they kind of go back. But I feel like projectors can get all the way on the one side of transference and just stay there. You know what I mean? And that's like basically yeah, this is, it's as dark as it gets, or I mean, it's as homogenized as it gets. And then you're a force of homogenization for others because your not self is trying to affirm itself, right? Um, And that's also why undefined ego people can be the scariest people on wanting other people to prove their worthiness, right? Because it's like they feel the need to, they feel that they're conditioned to prove it, and so they think everyone else should too.
Yeah.
um so I mean that works kind of, I mean it's true in many different ways for many different centers.
Yeah. On that note, how far are we with time, Sarah?
Oh, I mean, I think we did a pretty good number. I have like a million things to say that I could
Oh, you
say.
do? You have more?
Well,
Is
I
there
mean, I
anything?
always have more. I've been nonstop listening to Raw for like the past 3 weeks
Okay, yeah.
and reading things, but that does not mean that we need to do more today
Well,
because
on that note, on that note, I want to say something more,
okay,
which
go
is
ahead.
funny. Of like Sarah and I both have gate 12, and we were just in the 11-12 transit with the sun and the earth. And I think now at this point in time, we've moved on to gate 10 for the sun. But 12, which is where the earth was, is a gate of caution. It's social caution, like knowing when not to say anything. And during this transit this past week, like people talking have been so frustrating. Like, why do you have to say, like, just shut up? Like, just enjoy the silence. There is nothing to say to anyone. Just like hold your tongue. No one's been holding their tongue because they have the gate of ideas defined with 11, which is like, let's be all chatty and share all our ideas, which like Sarah and I have both of these channels, I mean, both of these gates. So for us, it's correct when we're invited to do so, to share our ideas or break the social caution barrier. But yeah, like gate 12 being defined by the earth made me very sensitive to people communicating, why they're communicating, like knowing when enough is enough in terms of communication, and just enjoying silence again. It's not just undefined throats that bother me now, it's all throats. Like, let's just not talk anymore, anyone. Just pure silence for the whole world.
I mean, well, when you get deep enough into the rabbit hole of human design, you're like literally everyone is full of garbage and nobody knows anything. And it's like everybody just says what they believe, and everybody just believes things. And based on the strength of their wrong beliefs, they can convince other people of those beliefs. And it just goes on and on based on who's able to act the strongest about their beliefs. And they're the ones usually with defined egos that everybody is following. um and then I realized like nobody's an authority, nobody knows better than me, not, I mean I don't know better than anybody else either.
But for
It's,
you, no
but
one
like
is better for
yeah,
you than you.
nobody's an authority. Like I used to, and this just harkens back to me being a child because my very first memories was like my mom was super dogmatic about being a Baptist, and I was homeschooled until I was 7 or 8. And I was really, really soaked in like the culture of Baptist Christianity in southern New Jersey, which is a weird place to be. And I immediately could tell that like everyone was full of shit. Like I knew everyone that was full. And that's why I realized I'm like, oh, this is what I'm here for. This is like what my emotional authority is here for, is to like just realize that people beliefs strengthened by the number of people that follow them, but really nobody's beliefs are better than anybody else's. Nobody's right, nobody deserves a position of extreme leadership for the most part. Like it gets really intense when you go far enough down the human design rabbit hole of just being like, why are you talking? Because there's nothing to say. Like there's nothing to say unless you're like, either you're saying stuff that's homogenized, right? Or you're saying stuff about your beliefs that may or may not be homogenized. And if they're not homogenized, then they may or may not be correct for me, right? Like it's irrelevant for me. So it gets really crazy.
But then here's the irony: people are listening to us right now.
I
We're saying
know,
all
but
this stuff of our own beliefs.
well, and it's the buck has to stop somewhere. I was like, there, how far down does it go? But this
But
also,
here's,
the whole, go ahead.
I want to say, here's the fine line, which is outer authority. Like
Yeah.
your outer authority, when it's correct, is what the other is there to hear because it's the correct mechanics. So for you to
Correct.
be
But
listening to us,
how many people in your life are living correctly?
I know, yeah, it goes back to transference. We're all in like stuck in our not selves, so we're not sharing outer authority correctly.
Well, and that's really truly like what is, you know, I think I'm just in a dark place about listening to people right now, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to want to, you know, ever. Of course, I love listening to certain people. They give me hope and they give me, you know, there's all kinds of things that listening to people who believe what they're saying and have some integrity with the way they live it, like they really do, and maybe they're using their outer authority properly, but there's just so much homogenized conversation
Yeah.
that I can't, I cannot abide, or I can try to abide, you know, but then I say something unsettling and everyone's like, what, you know? Um,
Yeah, my complacent, undefined emotional center abides and deals
I,
with it, and then just complains to Sarah later.
well, no, but that's exactly it. Like my emotional center will not, you know, it's either I'm not dealing with you or I'm going to say something that you're probably not going to like.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, it all comes down to who invites me to conversation. But as it turns out, more people do than you think. More people do than you think, probably because of my line 3 body just bumping into things all the time. But um more people do than you think. And yeah, so I mean there's you know the 10 or the 11 and the 12. And just to speak on really quick, maybe this will be the last thing that we talk about, this solar return of your design. So the solar return of your body happens 88 days before the solar return of your personality crystal.
For
uh
those of you not Astro people, solar return means your birthday.
yeah.
For the non-astrology geeks. So your design crystal birthday is 88 days before your birthday.
Yes, and I just had that
With
at
11 and 12.
gate 11 and 12, correct? With that comes a lot of immediately. Like, and this was so interesting because what Ross said about it was that this is like a chaotic time. You're not supposed to be making any big decisions because your personality is still working on the stuff that the last year was about, and your design body, your body's like, okay, like I'm ready to go on to the next thing. Like, let's, like, we're already ahead of ourselves. And I immediately felt it. Like it was crazy how much I felt it. And you know, something that I've just become kind of more and more accepting of is just how much we're passengers and how much we are just getting rocked by conditioning and transits all the time.
Oh my
And
God, yes.
there's
I
nothing.
have like a personal experience to attest to along those lines, which is like my solar return was at the beginning of this month. So I had that moment where the personality crystal and the design crystal hop on board the same page. Like they were dissonant for the past 3 months and now they're on the same page. And like, oh my goodness, it's such a good feeling. It's why we like our birthdays, people, because there's a clicking into itself. Like there's puzzle pieces falling into place, things aligning, insider mechanics that just harmonizes us from the inside out. And it feels so good. And for the past like solar return year, like I had pressure on gates 28, 58, and 32, which are like my typical not self-manifestor gates. But 28 is like finding purpose. And Sarah knows for the past year, I've been like in an existential crisis, feeling like there is like no purpose in the world, not just for me, but for everyone. And like we're just all floating along on a rock in outer space and we're all gonna die and like there's no point to being human. And it was like very draining on my existence to deal with that pressure every single day, and my thoughts would default to it and there's nothing I could do about it. And then I realized, oh, it's because the my not self was like harping what's the word, focusing. I want to say harpoon. I don't know why I'm feeling that's not the appropriate word, but it was
Harping,
hyper fixating.
harping,
Huh?
harping, harping.
Harping, there we go. Harping on those 2 3 gates. And after my birthday, there's no more existential crisis. It shut off
It
automatically
just goes
because
away.
it's conditioning.
Yes. Well, because it's conditioning and it's
It's the
like
program. Yeah.
it's identifying with it that becomes really, and that's kind of the thing. I'm like trying to, part of what deconditioning is disidentifying with some of the conditioning that got lodged in you when it was
Yeah.
just supposed to move through you. You
But
know,
you
when,
can't turn it off. And it's so hard not to identify with something as like your full self is experiencing it.
yeah, yeah. Well, and you know, as someone who's emotional, I've come to this year specifically, I was literally at the beginning of the year, I was on my deathbed, emotionally speaking. And it's like, and it's over now and I'm fine and it's out of my system and I could care less. Like poor me then. And it was really not fun. Like trust me, I was on my emotional deathbed, but the lowest low ever. And now I'm just like, well, and now we're here. Everything's okay. Like back to
That's
square
reality.
one, ready to be hurt again, as Michael Scott as Michael Scott said.
Let's get on the next roller coaster.
I'm like, all right, like let's try this again and not make a decision on an emotional high, can we please? But yeah, so it's like, you know, well, whatever. Like, and the
But as
thing,
you were in that low, it was probably really difficult not to identify with being on your emotional deathbed because that's what you were experiencing. And it became your, like, just everything you could, the filter through which you saw life, and you can't turn it off.
no, you can't turn it off. And it was deep. I was like, holy, this is as deep as this is as low as it goes. I was like, this is the low. Okay. People, like I was like, oh my God. Like I knew it was low. I knew I was low. But part I think of me going that low was like almost it it's part of me coming online to my sensitivity, and it's pushing me past my like past numb state where I was with my emotional wave. And now it's like the emotional wave is supposed to be, and the emotions in general are really like a guiding force for your life, especially if you're like as an emotional person, it is your authority, period, if you have your emotional system defined. And it's such a strong guiding force. And if you're numbing it out, then you don't realize when you're getting basically told to like look somewhere else, or you're getting colder, you know, you're not paying attention to that stuff when you're numbing out your emotional system. And so part of this is like coming home to my emotional system does not mean everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows. It means like fresh sensitivity to my emotions, so I know where to go and where not to go. But yeah, I mean, and this is also just to say part of the reason that I'm like, well, time to just surrender to my strategy and authority because I'm not making any good decisions without it. As it turns out, I haven't made a lot of great decisions in this incarnation so far without it. So, might as well. But yeah, it was really, really hard to not, my body was like identifying with it too. You know, my physical body wasn't like, all right, Sarah, chip her up, like we're good. It was like I'm on my emotional deathbed. My body was like shutting down. It didn't want to eat, you know, like it's just there's all of this stuff that happens that you can't, again, with the transits, you can't control. With people, you can't control the way that they condition you. And it's why you really, you know, you want to be around people who your authority agrees with, right? Because otherwise you are on a ride that you don't know if you want to be on.
But that also doesn't mean it's sunshine, rainbow daisies. Sometimes what
No.
is correct for your authority is also unpleasant,
Yeah,
but it will bring your signature of success in some way, shape, or form.
that's
So,
true. Well, yeah, and it's, you know, something that I just posted on my social media was just a quote about Ra and like the people that we meet. And it's true that, you know, everyone that we meet is in a sense correct for us because they're on our fractal, but they are on differing levels of being ready for us, right? So you could pass somebody by that, like if they were at a different place in their life, being on your fractal would mean that you would start talking to them about human design. but because they're not there, you're not going to have that conversation, and it's moot. It doesn't matter. So it's like you have to know when you're dealing with someone who, everyone's correct for you in that way, but like not everyone's ready, and so you have to be just aware of that. Okay. I feel like we did a pretty
This
good
was fun. Yeah, we talked about a lot of good stuff this episode. I hope you
well,
enjoyed it. We did.
yeah. Well, I mean, part of this is like I'm really again leaning into being a projector, and what me and Laura do best is
Send
just
audio messages to each other.
is talk. Yeah, what we do and what we've been trained in over the past 2 years is sending audio messages back and forth to each other, and also just generally talking about human design and like studying it and stuff. So I think other people, again, if it's correct for you, if you're on our fractal, whatever the case may be, it could be really fun to just sit back and listen to. Again, we're all right-minded over here, and so if we say something that's incorrect, feel free to correct us. Again, we don't care, but I can't control it. Laura can't control it. What comes out is just what comes out. And we have nothing to prove. So just a reminder that I wake up with every morning. But other than that, yeah, you can reach out to us on our social medias, I guess. I'm Third Eye Kiss. Laura, I think, is still on a hiatus, so maybe Laura, do you
Yeah,
want?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
Instagram, email. There's my email address, I think, somewhere in the show notes in the
Oh yeah, the
caption
email.
for our Spotify.
So there you
Subscribe
go.
or don't. Give us a review or don't. We have 2 reviews. We have 2 5-star reviews. So thank you to those 2 people who think we're top notch.
We love you.
Kudos to
We
you.
love you. We love you. You guys are really good taste. Okay. All right. That's enough. All right. So we will talk the next time we talk. And I hope everyone has a good holiday season, if that's something that you acknowledge. And so long.
Catch you on the flip side.